Let's talk about now the next section, management and deployment tools. In this module, you will be introduced to features, tools for managing and deploying Azure resources. You'll learn about the Azure portal, command line, and scripting tools that can help you deploy or configure resources. You will also learn about Azure services that will help you manage your on-premises and multi-cloud environments from Azure. In order to get the most out of Azure, you'll need a way to interact with the Azure environment. The management groups, subscription, resource groups, resources, and so on. Azure provides multiple tools for managing your environment, including the Azure portal is a web-based unified console that provides an alternative to the command line tools. With Azure Portal, you can manage your Azure subscription by using a graphical user interface. You can build, manage, and monitor everything from a simple web apps to complex cloud deployments, create custom dashboards for an organized view of resources, configure accessibility options for an optimal experience. The Azure portal is designed for resiliency and continuous availability. It maintains a presence in every Azure data center. This configuration makes the Azure portal resilient to individual data center failures and avoids network slowdowns by being closed to users. The Azure portal will updates continuously and requires no downtime for maintenance activities. Now let's talk about Azure Cloud Shell. Azure Cloud Shell is a browser-based shell tool that allows you to create and configure and manage Azure resources using a shell. Azure Cloud Shell supports both Azure PowerShell and Azure Command Line interface, which is Bash Shell. What is Azure PowerShell? Azure PowerShell is with which developers, DevOps, IT professionals can run commands called commandlets. These commands are called REST APIs to perform management tasks in Azure. Commandlets can be run independently to handle one-off exchanges, or they may combine to help orchestrate complex tasks such as the routine setup and teardown of a maintenance of a single resource or multiple connected resources, the development of an entire infrastructure which might contain dozens of hundreds of resources from imperative code, capturing commands and scripts that makes the process repeatable and you can automate it. In addition to be available via the Azure Cloud Shell, you can install and configure PowerShell on Windows, Linux, and Mac platforms. So what is Azure CLI? The Azure CLI is a functionality equivalent to Azure PowerShell, with the primary difference being that the syntax of commands. While Azure PowerShell uses PowerShell commands, the Azure CLI uses Bash commands. The Azure CLI provides the same benefits of handling discrete tasks or orchestrating complex operations through code. It's also installable on Windows, Linux, Mac platform, as well as through the Azure Cloud Shell. Due to the similarities in the capabilities and access between Azure PowerShell and Bash, Azure CLI mainly comes down to which language you are most familiar with. Managing hybrid and multi-cloud environments can get complicated. Azure provides a host of tools to provision, configure, and monitor Azure resources. And utilizing Azure Resource Manager, Arc lets you extend Azure compliance and monitoring to your hybrid and multi-cloud configurations. Azure Arc simplifies governance and management by delivering a consistent multi-cloud and on-premises management platform. Azure Arc provides a centralized, unified way to manage your entire environment together by projecting your existing non-Azure resources into ARM. Manage your multi-cloud and hybrid virtual machines, Kubernetes clusters, and databases as if they were running in Azure. Use familiarity, Azure services and management capabilities regardless of where they live. Continue using traditional IT ops while introducing DevOps practices to support new cloud and native patterns in your environment. Configure custom locations as abstraction layer on top of Azure Arc to enable Kubernetes clusters and extensions. And that's just to name a few. There's so many other benefits that Azure Arc provides to you. Azure Resource Manager is the deployment and management service for Azure. It provides a management layer that enables you to create, update, and delete resources in your Azure account. Anytime you do anything within Azure resources, ARM is involved. Azure Resource Manager benefits include with Azure Resource Manager, you can manage your infrastructure through declarative templates rather than scripts. A resource manager template is a JSON file that defines what you want to deploy in Azure. Deployment, manage, and monitor all resources for your solution as a group rather than handling these resources individually. Redeploy your solution throughout the development lifecycle and have confidence that your resources are deployed in a consistent state. Define the dependencies between resources so they deploy the correct order. Apply access control to all services. RBAC is natively integrated into the management platform. Apply tags to resources to logically organize all the resources in your subscription. Clarify your organization's billing by viewing costs for a group of resources that share the same tag. Infrastructure as code is a concept where you manage your infrastructure as lines of code. Leveraging Azure Cloud Shell, Azure PowerShell, or Azure CLI are some examples of using code to deploy cloud infrastructure. ARM templates is another way of infrastructure as a code at work. By using ARM templates, you can describe the resources you want to use in a declarative JSON format. With an ARM template, the deployment of code is verified before code is running. This ensures that the resources can be created and connected correctly. The template then orchestrates the creation of those resources in parallel. That is if you need 50 instances of the same resource, all 50 instances are created at the same time. Ultimately, the developer, DevOps professional, or IT professional needs only to define the desired state and configuration of each resource in the ARM template, and the template does the rest. Templates can even execute PowerShell and Bash scripts before or after the resource has been set up.